Okay. This meeting is being live streamed. I consent.
Shit. Got it.
You got what?
Got it. No, it asks you, it's like leave meeting or got it are the two choices.
Okay.
So I got it.
So here is the link. I'm going to send you guys out the link. Okay. Let me see. We got the chat up and running. All right. Mark is on. Hello, Mark.
Okay, I'm going to sharing it right now.
All right, let me post it on YouTube. Sorry, guys, this is a business at the top of the show that you're just going to have to contend with. Let's see here. Sign into that. Already have an account.
Sorry, guys.
My Twitter got blocked. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
What?
I couldn't log in from my laptop. I don't know why. Okay.
You hear something about COVID?
Golly, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Like, you can't do anything. It's
you
like,
can't.
whoa. Hey. I was just saying, I'm sorry you got COVID. Like, don't block me for that.
Right?
I'm sorry that you feel so bad because you got COVID. Block. It's like, Jesus, you guys. And then what's even more intrusive is on the Instagram stories, like the Autobot that puts the CDC COVID-19 information on the bottom or whatever, and it actually blocks like the information that the presenter is actually trying to put out there. But sometimes it does it so irrelevantly so.
Yes.
Right. It's like the post isn't even about anything. Like, how did you guys flag that? Like, who created this bot?
I get stuff pops up.
Hey, can we try to not to get canceled within the first couple of minutes of being live, please? Hello, everyone. I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat. We're live, yeah.
I didn't know we were already live.
Happy New Year, Miguel. Happy New Year, Mark.
I'm doing a post really quick.
We have Australia. Good to see you here. And here we go. Okay, well, welcome one and all to the Bill Yang Podcast, a live edition with two dear friends of mine, Jason Koop and Sally McRae. We did this last year and thought it could be fun and informative to do so again to kickstart 2022. So whether you're joining us here on the live stream on YouTube or listening or watching it after the fact, thanks for joining us. The format will be the same as what we did last year. To those of you in the chat room, go ahead and submit your questions and we will try to answer it on the air live. But if you want to come on the air and actually join us, email me at billyangpodcast@gmail.com and we will get you on the air and make it a little more interactive and fun. My guest tonight, my co-host, I should say, don't really need an intro, but let me do so anyway. Jason Koop is one of the more outspoken and dynamic personalities in the sport of ultra running, who I hope won't get us canceled tonight. He's also a coach for Carmichael Training System, where he specializes in working with ultra endurance athletes of all abilities. Also the host of the Koopcast, where I was bestowed the honor of being guest 0. Was it Koop on, or was it episode 0?
Yeah. Episode 0, guest number 1, and it's all your fault that I got into that mess in the first place.
Well, he has the Koopcast, but he also has a book, the second edition of Training Essentials for Ultra Running, which
everyone needs to have.
This thing feels like a textbook. I feel like I'm back in school again. It has a subtitle of How to Train Smarter, Race Faster, and Maximize Your Ultra Marathon Performance. What is going on, my guy? Happy belated New Year and welcome back.
Happy New Year. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to kick off 2022 back on this podcast with you and Sally.
All right. Woo! And speaking of Sally, she's a mom, she's a coach, she's an iFit trainer, she's an OG Nike Trail athlete, the host of the Choose Strong podcast, speaker, soon to be author, and a lot more. Sally, it has been ages. How are you doing, dear friend?
I know, it has been so long. I don't think I've even seen you since May.
Like, I don't even recall what that was. I mean, it's been that long. Here I thought
It was
moving
before I was
from-
heading out for a bad water training.
Yeah, and here I thought moving from Bend to, I don't know, like 20 miles away in Huntington Beach would mean more trail runs and more, post trail run.
You're a busy
eats, but-
man. You're a busy man, Billy.
I'm sorry. There.
No.
Yeah.
Hold on. I think all of this has to do with Sally, because you forgot one title that Sally has, and that is icon, right? Anytime you're on a shirt,
Well,
Oh yeah,
gosh.
that's right.
anytime your name graces a
No.
shirt, you get bestowed the title of icon. Sally
Oh my
McRae.
gosh. I actually had emailed them and said, I don't think you should put me on that shirt for reals.
You're a Badwater champ. Come on, girl. Jesus.
Well, speaking of bad water, I'd love to hear a little quick personal anecdotes from you guys. What was your favorite memory from 2021, and what are you most looking forward to in 2022? Sally, you can go first.
Oh, okay. Goodness. My favorite memory from 2021. Well, a lot happened in 21. It's kind of hard to zero down. So like in my personal life, we did a very quick move. I actually moved back from Bend back to Huntington Beach just under 3 weeks before I raced Badwater. So moving out of state, that's not stressful at all. With your entire family right before racing a giant race. But that was pretty big. And then, obviously being able to, share the Badwater journey with so many incredible people. I don't think I'll ever forget that. I mean, that's truly what makes that race so awesome is the journey with your crew and the people that support you along the way. So I think those were the two, the two things that stick out the most. And then in 2022, I think the biggest thing that sticks out right now is just, finishing up this book. And, my kids are keeping me really busy. I'm really excited about the goals that they have. Like, I'm just having fun being a mom of teenagers right now. I never thought I'd say that because raising teenagers is also hard, but writing and raising teenagers, and of course training, but I haven't really shared what it is I'm training for yet. So I'm not going to do that on the show either. So,
Whoa, lame. Jesus.
Why is that, Sally?
So lame.
Because I'm having so much fun with everyone guessing what it is.
God.
It's entertainment every day. I get messages. Are you doing this? Are you doing this?
So lame.
All right,
Sally,
what about you?
No, hold on. I get to grill Sally for a second.
Okay.
You're writing a book as a personal memoir?
Yeah, it's a
right.
memoir. So it's definitely not a training coaching book like what you just put out, which, by the way, everyone watching, you need to put that on. That needs to be a part of your library. I have the first edition here. The second edition is supposed to arrive tomorrow. Got the notification from Amazon today. I was very excited about that.
I mean, if nothing else, it'll make hell of a paperweight because this thing is hefty. It is hefty.
Billy, is that the version I sent you? The hardback?
Yeah, I just got it today,
Yeah.
so I haven't had a chance to really pour through it.
I love hardback.
So, Koop, real quick, regarding this book, is this something that should be read from end to end, or can you kind of piecemeal it if you feel like you're good on a certain section, like say menstrual cycles, and want to skip ahead? Is this a book that kind of allows itself, people to piecemeal it?
It's definitely designed that you can consume it piecemeal. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. The way that the chapters lay out, and even the way that the audiobook is laid out, it's definitely meant to it's meant to be gone through and then referenced and then re-referenced. And I think the best way to illustrate that is through a super nerdy aspect of the book, which is the index. So when I had the book indexed, I told the indexer to index it very specifically as a reference book, which is more expensive, more elaborate. It's what they call heavy-handed. And if you just flip to the back of it, it'll be very readily apparent that that's the case, where you can look up any number of things and then immediately reference where those things are in the book and kind of piece it together from there. So yeah, absolutely. Piece by piece is a good way to tackle it.
Sally, Matt guessed Nolan's 14. If it is Nolan's, then I don't know about this yet. I'm going to be very upset.
That's a pretty common guess. There's that. There's JMT.
Okay.
I'm really just doing laps in the neighborhood.
If we have any body language experts. Why don't we kick off today's show with an old favorite, and I don't mean that disparagingly. Mark Griffith has a question and wants to join us on air. Once again,
I ran into Mark in Austin. What's up, Mark? It's good to see you
podcast
again.
at gmail.com. If you too want to join us and be part of the conversation live, we'll give Mark a minute here. And in the meantime, let's see here. We have people checking in from all over the place.
Sally, we need to coordinate afterwards on your book.
I love all the advice. I love your comment the other day. A lot of comments came in on a post that I did the other day, and your comment made me laugh out loud. Like, writing is effing hard. And I'm like, thank you, because only a writer would say that. It is.
It's very, very, very rewarding, but it's excruciatingly difficult.
Yeah, I have some questions about that, so we'll
especially memoir writing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, Mark, it's good to see you, buddy. Checking in from Issaquah, right?
Yep, Issaquah.
Okay, and Mark has the best lighting out of all of us. Can we just take note of that? You're looking good, Mark.
Well, Mark does some video work himself.
Dude, is that Bob Dylan behind you? Is that a Bob Dylan?
That is a hand drawing of Bob Dylan.
What? Dude, you get so many
Bob
points
Dylan
right
fan.
now. That is awesome. Yeah. I'm a big Bob Dylan fan too. Very cool.
I got like a bearded dude on my shirt, so. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Good to see you again, Mark.
Good to see you.
So you get to kick off tonight with your with our first interactive question. What is your question and who is it for?
So it's for both Koop and Sally, and I'd like to hear them debate the pros and cons of strength training. I know Sally.
I knew you were going to do that.
I'm like, let's start a little fight.
Wait, before we start, though,
I just think it's good. I think it's good to talk about it.
Yeah, and you know what? This is important to know, because when I do talk about strength training, one of the first things I say is that coaching philosophies are different across the board, especially depending on who you're coaching, what phase it is that they're coaching, what they're training for. So you are going to get a lot of different, views. Jason is one of my favorite geeks out there. And so my goal is to never win him in an argument or anything like this, because it probably won't happen. But he always makes for the best discussion. So we can dive in wherever. I personally love strength training. That's kind of like my thing. So it's something that I love to talk about. But I have to start with this. Jason told me yesterday about a strength exercise that he was doing. And he's like, Sally, you'd be so impressed, Sally. He's telling me like this heavyweight exercise he's doing. And I was like, heck yeah, I am actually really impressed and totally stoked. So what the audience might not know is that Jason actually strength trains. So we'll start there.
He does.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I built out my basement. It was a Christmas present for my wife and
I love that. What's in there?
Right now it's dumbbells.
Yeah.
Iron. I mean, once again, I keep it simple. So it's for me. It's not built for purpose. It's not built for any other athlete but my wife and myself. And it's dumbbells and a floor and a bench and a couple other bands and very, 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 very.
Now, Koop, let's get this clear. You're not necessarily anti-strength training. I think it's just lower on the rung of importance, right?
Yeah, and it's really, I don't know. I think it's really unfortunate that for whatever reason that picture has gotten painted over the years. And the fact of the matter is that I look at this from a very pragmatic point of view. And that is when you comb through all of the literature out there from a performance perspective, and I'm emphasizing those words very intentionally, you might be able to get a couple of % in performance improvement out of a very well designed strength training program. And I can even be more specific than that. That performance improvement is very narrowly defined within running economy, not exclusively, but pretty freaking close to just running economy. You pick up about 2% in running economy across the board. You look at large swaths of athletes and things like that. And whether or not that translates into ultra marathon performance, that running economy improvement translates into ultra marathon performance is a big question. My opinion on that, and it is certainly an opinion because the research, we're a few years away from teasing this piece out, is that running economy is not as important in ultramarathon running as it is in road running, where it is critically important. However, when you broaden the lens out from this very specific performance perspective, there are a lot of rationales to which you can use strength training. You can use it from an injury prevention perspective, perhaps. You can use it for a lifestyle enhancement perspective, perhaps. And you can say that maybe that lifestyle enhancement has performance gains. And then you start to kind of make all of these different extrapolations. And that's why I've got the dumbbells in the back of my, in the bottom of my basement, is I just like lifting weights. Mm-hmm. Do I think that that is going to improve my performance at Cocodona 250? Probably not. Definitely not. It's definitely not. But I just enjoy lifting weights. And so I think the first question that I go through with any athlete who asks about that is, what do you want to use strength training for? And it doesn't have to be very rigidly defined for most athletes as performance or lifestyle or whatever, but you try to get the right blend first. And then based off of that blend, you can decide how important or unimportant you want the strength training component to be. So for example, if I have an athlete that comes to me and says, hey, listen, I want to be able to pick my grandkids up. I want to make sure that I have really good bone health. I want to make sure that I can take my luggage and put it in the overhead bin and not throw my back out. You know what? Strength training is going to be a bigger part of your performance. If I have an athlete come to me and say, I don't give a shit about any of that, I want to maximize my performance for this one specific ultramarathon event, then the strength training component for those athletes might be minimal or even none. And so I think if we start to think about it as this spectrum of training specificity that is not indifferent to any other aspect of training specificity, that starts to create the kind of the right context for things.
Excellent. Mark, do you have anything to follow up on?
No, I just want to say, for me personally, like I kept hurting myself lifting weights because I kept trying to be like Superman, and that was my own stupidity, not the fault of strength training. Let's be really clear. And I personally love just seeing how strong Sally looks, and she really like lives up to the like someone that you could take advice from a strength training perspective, and is a strong runner. And so I just knew it's one of those things that I think it's important to talk about. And I think it's good to have the perspective of adapting it to what your needs are and what you want to get out of it. So
to that question, Mark, I think this is something that Sally can really jump in on, because she has a lot of expertise on this. We both work as remote endurance coaches. I know Sally does a lot of in-person stuff as well, but I'm almost exclusively remote. And I know that a lot of athletes have the same question you have, Mark, is like, how do I start without hurting myself, essentially? And that's hard to do if you don't have access to a really high quality physical trainer that you can go into. And let's make no mistake, those are hard to find. I love the gym community. I love the strength training community. That sounds like my dog, but it's not. I love the strength training community. And I know he's like, it's my dog. I love the strength training community. And I think that they bring a lot of value to the athletic community in whole, but it is very, very challenging to find a good personal trainer, a good strength training coach. If you just walk into your normal 24-hour fitness or Lifetime Fitness and ask the person that you're gonna get assigned to. And so a lot of athletes have that question of like, well, how do I start? So Sally, where would you direct people that are coming at it from that angle?
Yeah, it is great. I mean, and I know Jason, you and I, on a side note, we've talked about this before. We should podcast together just on this, because I love the conversations that are coming out of it. And it is, interesting enough, in the last like 2 years, I'm seeing almost all of the running communities jump on it now. I'm like, oh, interesting. Now you guys are jumping in and saying, oh, this is why you should strength train. So you see Runner's World and Ultra Running Magazine and all the coaches and everyone saying we need to be strength training. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, regardless of the sport, regardless if you're a recreational or a pro athlete, our bodies were made to be strong. We have muscles for a reason, and we need them, and we need to be using them. Every day we break down. But the cool thing about our muscles is that we can always, even if we're 98 years old, we can build up muscle. We can get strong. So as we break down, we still have the ability to get strong. And unfortunately, we have to work a little bit harder than we used to because our bodies are constantly breaking down. So when someone comes to me and says, I want to do this 100-mile race, when you ask an athlete about their background and you really want to customize a training program that fits them, you have to look at the big picture of who they are and what it is they're doing. So if one athlete comes to me and says, hey, I do CrossFit 3 days a week, completely different starting point that someone says, I've never lifted weights in my life. They could be the same age and have had kind of the same running career, but the body that I'm starting with, the roots that they have are going to be different. And so when I start with someone, and this is actually one of the things that are released on my app, it's called Running Foundations, and it's no weights. I'm really big, and I actually worked for a sports PT for a while, and this is where I learned so much. I actually created a strength and running biomechanics class within the PT clinic with the help of PTs. And what I would learn what I learned in my time there was that almost every person that walked through that door was there because they had a lack of mobility or a lack of strength. And they needed someone to help them with it because it had led to an injury. So the foundations for any athlete is first finding out where their weaknesses are, where their immobilities are, and tackle those first before you put a weight in your hand. It is very true. When CrossFit got really big, and this is around the time that I was working at the sports PT, the head sports PT there loved it. He's like, oh, yeah. CrossFit is bringing me so much business because everyone is going, just as we're talking about, Jason, and they're going and they're throwing weights over their head and they're not even addressing the fact they have all these weaknesses in their lower back and their shoulder and they don't know how to do the movements. The social media is a double-edged sword. We see people that look good in their workout clothes and we trust the exercises they're doing. But the thing is, most of those people are not qualified to give you a workout or to tell you what it is that you're doing. They don't know what they're talking about, but they look great and you want to look like them, so you follow along. And so the best thing that we can do as runners or anyone that is wanting to get into strength training, you first need to give yourself an assessment. And one of my favorite books, one of the favorite guys that I actually sat under in one of my certifications many years ago, it was more of a clinical class. I don't even know why they let me in because it was all doctors and PTs, but it's Jay Deshary. And he has a really cool book on running mechanics. And there's a test in there that you can do. And it is no weights. It's you standing in front of a mirror and doing single leg squats and watching to see which way your knee dips. Is it going over metatarsal 1 or 2? Are you going in? Are you going out? Are you able to take what can you do with a PVC pipe? And are you able to bend this way and that way? Do you have a flat back or a curved back? I mean, it's so eye-opening that it also helps people understand why they feel the way they do when they run. Why do your hips always hurt? Why do your IT bands always hurt, but your friend doesn't every time you descend? Not all of these things are because you're not doing CrossFit style weight training in the gym. And I'll tell you what, I love that you said that you have dumbbells. That is about 98% of what I do is dumbbells. I love the big bars and doing all that stuff, but the majority of my training is getting my body as strong as possible. And it's with dumbbells and body weight. And I think for endurance athletes, that is where you want to be. So and you know this too, the training specificity. If you want to be a CrossFitter, then you're going to focus more on the CrossFit style stuff. But if you want to be a strong ultra runner, you need to get your body strong, and it needs to start by assessing where you're weak.
Sally, somebody had a follow-up regarding calisthenics. If that counts as strength training, or does it have to be more weight-based?
Yeah, I'm really big. One of the most powerful things, and I've done this in my live workouts. I used to do a lot of live coaching with Nike, and we'd have like 60, 70 runners out on the track. And when they were done doing their track workout, I'd put them all in the middle of the grass, have them be shoulder to shoulder. They all drop down into planks, and I'd walk down the middle of them, and just within a plank, it would tell me so much about these athletes, the sway of their back, what their hips were doing. And I'd have them lift a right leg, a left leg. I'd have them drop down on their belly and then pull back up. It is incredible how difficult that is for an athlete. So the first thing that you need to tackle is being able to lift your own body. So if you are already struggling with, standing on one leg and then sitting back in a chair and then standing back up, if that is really difficult for you, don't go and tackle weights until you can tackle your own body first. You should be able to lift your body and set it back down. You should be able to stand with balance and coordination and feel the center of your body, because at the end of the day, running is standing on one foot. So if you can't lift it up and down with ease and feel that strength, if you can't stand on one foot without wobbling all over the place and move up and down, then that's a good starting point for you. So yes, any body weight exercises, calisthenics, that's a great place to start. And you're gonna really notice a difference when you incorporate that into your workout. And it does not have to be hour-long training. 10 minutes a day is going to make a huge difference. You'll feel it in your form. You'll feel it just in how you walk, and how you feel when you wake up in the morning.
Okay, so let's definitely get into the nuts and bolts. There's a lot of questions that we want to get to. We have Michelle, who's going to be jumping on with us. She has a question for you guys as well. But while we wait for her, and Michelle, be sure to turn down the volume for the broadcast itself. Say a client comes to you, it's the first conversation, you want to set the stage. Oh, actually, Michelle's on. Let's go ahead and.
What's up, Michelle? Good to see you.
Michelle, cool. Where are you at right now?
I'm in New Jersey.
Excellent.
She's in New Jersey, and she's done Grindstone 100.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I see that sweatshirt. Was that this past year you did that, 2021?
No, I did 18 and 19.
Okay, very cool. Congratulations. I love your horse picture back there too. I love that.
Oh,
very awesome.
She's going to have to, Michelle, you're going to have to expand upon that now that Sally opened the door for it. Michelle and I know each other, and this is actually, okay. Yeah, this is actually a really cool thing about Michelle. You want to tell them?
Did you make that?
About the horses.
Did you make that
I came from the endurance riding background.
Oh, very cool. So have you done the Western States?
I have not.
Not yet.
Tevis Cup.
The Tevis Cup.
Not.
Yeah.
My horse has done it, but I have not.
That is
Michelle,
so
what's your
cool.
question tonight?
My question is, are you guys going to bring back your camps this year?
Oh, God.
Yes, I am. My first one is in New Mexico in May.
All right.
Oh, excellent. Is it sold out? Are there still spots? And
no, we're releasing registration in the next couple of weeks. So
excellent.
That is forthcoming. And it would be great to see you there, Michelle.
Awesome.
Sally, do you want to take a quick 30, 45 seconds to talk about your camps, what people can expect? I've been to a couple of them, and they're pretty freaking amazing from
Billy, Jason, if you guys want to come out to them, let me know. That would be absolutely incredible and make the camp way more valuable if you guys were there. My camps are based on fun. I always have to make that clear. It is not a training camp, although that is something that is on in the works of a legit training camp where you go and it's like Hell Week, but that's down the road. These are about community. My goal is to you come in, you meet people, and you spend a lot of time with these people. We keep everyone kind of like in a together at all times. We have 4 to 5 coaches, so people are you're always running with people no matter what. But the goal is for you to leave with new best friends. Historically, and I've been doing camps for 6 years now, and the people that have come to my camps, they're crewing and pacing for each other. They create these chats on WhatsApp, and they keep going. And so
I'm still on one of those threads, Sally.
Yeah, it's amazing.
From 4 years ago.
Yeah. So our goal is every day we take you somewhere new to the most beautiful trails in that area. And then at night we go into town and we take you to like really good food, or we, do a brewery or something like that. And then of course there's a ton of swag, and all of my sponsors really spoil the athletes. So yeah, it's awesome. I usually do 2 to 3 a year, and the qualifications, people are always asking, oh, do I have to be super fast? I say, if you can run a half marathon on the road, then you're ready to go. So it's not a speed hardcore camp, but every day we run, and it's really fun. So
Awesome,
thanks,
Michelle.
thanks, Billy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Koop, you did not. Oops. Sorry, Michelle. I bumped you off. Okay. Koop, can you actually take 30 or 45 seconds to answer this question?
Yeah, I can take less than that. I'm out of the camp business.
You are? Okay.
I've run camps ever since I've been a coach, which is going on 20 years now, in all different formats: cycling, running, triathlon. And my most recent iteration, I would say for the past, Jesus, man, probably like a decade now, is I would run a camp out of my house for athletes. And it was really cool. I really loved doing it. But COVID kicked it down for a couple of years just because everything was restricted. And then finally, I'm just kind of giving the product up. It's cool. I like going to them. I like putting them on, but I've got to pick and choose where my energy is devoted to. And that was something that I conscientiously decided to give up going forward.
So we have Laura waiting in the wings. She has a Badwater question, but before we get her on, we got in the weeds pretty quickly, but let's zoom out a little bit. Say a client,
look at who you brought on.
Say a client comes to you, right? And they want to, it's the first conversation. You want to set the stage, the mindset to help them actualize their goals. Where do you start?
Oh God damn, man. How much time do we have?
I know.
I mean, you understand that no, seriously.
That question.
No, but here's like, from a practical standpoint, when I train coaches to do this, it takes like 8 weeks. Just that part. Like, so that's why it's I know it's a question that everybody kind of wants to know, and Sally and I will do our best to kind of summarize it. But in reality, to like fully answer that question to the degree to which you would fully understand it, it would take like 5 podcasts. Because
okay, let me frame it this way. Like, what is the little nugget or the piece of advice so that people can actually maintain the stick-to-itiveness and to keep showing up day in and day out? Because the mental component is, I would imagine, is a huge part of being a coach, right?
Yeah. So let me jump in first, Sally. So
Yeah.
I used to, when I first started coaching, I had this like really rigid process to onboard an athlete, and that's because I coached a lot of athletes. I had a huge stable, and I had to have this process to where I got a new athlete and I could kind of go through the entire thing very quickly. Where you live, what's your personal life like? How many times can you devote to training? How many hours can you devote to training? What day is your long run? All these kind of prototypical questions that you go out there and you ask 100 coaches, they're going to have this same format of an intake questionnaire within 95% of each other. And it's all kind of the same BS. I've learned that now my intro question, which is going to kind of illuminate the answer to the question that you really want, Billy, is how can I help? And nobody really expects that question. And that's why unless they've listened to this podcast now, and that's why I asked that, because it forces the athlete to come up with the very first thing that comes to mind for them. And that ends up being so powerful because it's normally not anything about whatever event that they've just signed up for. It's normally the thing that is the most important to them, whether that's consistency or accountability or motivation or some sort of technical guidance or a blend of all of these things that coaches do. And so when athletes ask me that question, hey, how do I figure out how this whole coaching things work and all this other stuff, I just ask, how can the coach help? And the answer to that question is rather insightful for how you want to take that training journey, because you will absolutely find, and there's enough coaches out there in the space right now, not only the trail and ultra running world, but if you broaden it out to all the endurance sports, there's enough coaches out there that they all have kind of like their little niche. You know, they're good at everything. You have to be a jack of all trades or a Jill of all trades to be a good coach, but they definitely all have their different specificities. And I'm not talking about necessarily a technical specificity, like, oh, I really know nutrition, which is super valuable, right? But a lot of people have a psychological specificity, interpersonal specificity, a specificity within maybe even a certain race. And so, race by an event, right? Not the color of one's skin, but I think if athletes can first kind of take a step back and think fundamentally, this is how I want somebody to help, that triggers off the rest of the journey for that athlete. And then however they end up crafting their guidance for that race, whether it's with a coach or a friend or a training group, or they kind of get it, ad hoc through the internet, it provides a foundation for that athlete to kind of like really follow the pathway that is going to be the most impactful for them.
Sally, anything you want to add?
That was really good. I agree with him. I think that it would take us 5 podcasts to dive into that. And the reality is you're dealing with a individual. Everyone is different.
Yeah.
And I think that for any good coach, you have to be good at communicating. That's so much of what your job is. At the end of the day, you're listening. And I love, Jason, I love that question. How can I help you? Because you're so right. It's amazing looking back on some of the athletes that I've coached, where I'm like, you actually don't care that I'm giving you anything to do. You actually just want to talk. Like you actually are working through this monster inside you that's keeping you from believing that you can do anything. I've actually shared this story a few times about this athlete that I had coached, who had tried to, over the course of 20 years, finish a marathon, and she couldn't do it. But this woman was wildly successful in every area of her life. So successful. And throughout her years, she had listened twice to different PTs that told her, you do not have the body for an endurance race. And she would get injuries like in her shins and different things. And I decided to meet, she was local to me, so I decided to meet with her more one-on-one, and I would just take her to the track. So she was training for this marathon, and all we would do was easy running around the track, but that was like not the workout. Like in her mind, she thought that was the workout, but I was like, I just need to listen to this person and figure out why it is that she can do all these other things with great success, but she can't get to the finish line in something that she's wanted to do for 20 years. So, about 5 weeks before the race, she was, her shins were starting to hurt again. And so she went and saw a PT, and he's like, I just think that this just isn't for you. You need to drop down to the half marathon. And so when I met with her again, she's like, you know what, Sally, he's right. I've been seeing him for a while. And, some people are just not cut out to do marathons. And I said, you're cut out for whatever you train for. If you want to do this, you can make it happen. It doesn't matter, as far as like PRing, going, certain times and paces and things like that, your goal that I know that you have told me over and over again is you just want to get to this finish line, and you've put in the training, you're going to get to the finish line. You're not dropping down to the half. And she just looked at me like, whoa, and I was like, no disrespect to your PT, but the reasons he's giving you, and I've walked with you and I've watched you and I've seen you and I've trained you, I know you can do this. And so 5 weeks later, she, lined up to the Big Sur marathon, and she finished. She finally got to that finish line, and we met for dinner a few days later, and I opened up the door to this restaurant, and as soon as our eyes met, she just burst into tears. And what it came down to is just belief. And it's interesting because I think that athletes, a very common question that I get over the years is, in one form or another, Jason, I know you've gotten this before, is, do you think I can do this?
Yeah.
So often athletes just want to know that someone believes in them, that their wild and crazy idea of doing their first 10K or their first 200-mile race is actually doable, because somewhere in their mind, someone has told them or convinced them that only this group of people can do it, or only people built like this, or that look like this, or have these accomplishments, or ran in college that can do that. And it just simply isn't true. And so our role as coaches is to say, I believe in you. And guess what? Your journey might not look like everybody else's. It's going to fit your life, your lifestyle, your goals, your body, all of these things. And we're going to make it happen. And I'm going to be with you every step of the way. And really that was, what got Holly to the finish line in her first marathon. Was just, I would not let her take a step back from finishing that race, because I believed in her. And that's the best part about being a coach.
Yeah. Shout out to Holly's.
Here's the
Sorry,
deal.
go ahead.
No, Billy, I got to say this. Here's the deal. Everybody out there listening, Sally is a fantastic coach, and here's why. You guys can look at all this like, oh, she's so.
I'm recording that clip and putting it in my audio files forever.
No, but here's why. Here's why. It's very easy to look at the simplistic view of, oh, Sally's so motivational and she believes in her athletes and keep your heart up and all this kind of psychobabble nonsense that always comes over for her Instagram. But hold on, I can see through that. And here was the telltale sign in that story. When you said, I'm trying to figure out why this athlete is so successful across all of these other aspects of her life, yet is not in marathoning, that is good coaching. Behind the, I'm going to say facade in kind of a facetious way, Sally, so you have to forgive me. Behind the facade of all of the behind the facade of all the motivation and laughing and crying and all this kind of emotion, that's good coaching, because you're recognizing where the athlete's strengths and weaknesses are through something that is outside of the athletic context. And that is something that not a lot of coaches have the skill to do, because a lot of times they'll be like, oh, what's your 5K PR? What's your marathon PR? What's this? Okay, well, you're better at the 5K. So here, we're going to tailor training towards that. You took an overall, and I don't know whether you realize this is great coaching or not, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You took that to a higher level by saying, why are you successful, not in athletics, but in life, across all these areas? Let's figure out how to do that and translate that into athletics. That's awesome coaching.
Thank you.
Well, you keep mentioning the word facade. That sounds like a bit of a pejorative, but where it's not a facade is in her actual, like Sally keeps teasing me about being the busiest person in the world. I don't hold a candle to what Sally has on her plate. From being a mom, being a wife, running her own business, training as a full-time elite athlete, running your own business. Did I mention that one? I mean, just like on and on and on, making time for this program. And we were supposed to do this a week ago, but Sally just like has all these things on her, but she doesn't
wait for the talent. That's what that's
no,
called.
but
If
you want to see an example of anybody out there who's using how busy they are as an excuse, look no further than Sally McRae on like what you can accomplish if you put your mind to it. So, I mean, either one of you can speak to this, but what do you say?
Why are you guys
to
being
person?
so nice to me tonight?
I don't know. It'll come back around, Sally. I'm going to grill you on something eventually.
Yeah, stay tuned to the end. What do you say to the person who says, well, I just don't have the time to train for a half marathon, a marathon, a 50K? How do you speak to that person?
Jason, why don't you tackle that first?
I wanted you to go first.
You know what though? You've coached so many athletes across, like, not just running. And I think that when I think of like Ironman and triathlon, having time for all three disciplines and doing them well, I would love to hear some of the conversations you've had.
First off, I try to figure out where their values are. Right. And some of that actually shows up without even trying, because you can see how compliant or non-compliant they are, not only in my Training Peaks, red, yellow, green scheme, but also throughout other areas of life. If you can kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and you have a good relationship with that athlete. So we run into this a lot, not only with myself, but also in our broader coaching group. And the conflict always comes down to the mismatch. I want to do this, but yet I don't have enough, I won't commit enough time to. And what I say to those athletes is like, you're going to make the time for the things that are valuable. There are very, very few exceptions to that. And normally those exceptions are forced by circumstances beyond their control. There's a wildfire, we've been living through that for the last few years. They have some sort of personal, tragedy. They have some sort of work thing that goes on that's kind of outside of their control. And those things, those extenuating circumstances that are outside of their control outstanding, you really are going to make the time for the things that are most valuable to you. And that's fine. If you value doing X instead of training, that's totally fine. Nobody's going to judge that decision, but you have to have goals that are equivalent to what that value system actually is. And so my ongoing steps with athletes, and super busy athletes. I mean, Sally and I, we could probably trade stories for forever about some of the
doctors
busiest
and surgeons and lawyers, like crazy.
Unbelievable. It always comes down to, how much do you value what you're actually doing versus all of these other things? Okay, let's just be honest with that. Okay, and then based off of that honesty, here's where we're going to go. It's where the values start to become incongruent with what your actions actually are, where it actually becomes a conflict. And here's something that I'll also throw in, since it's a little bit of a related topic, and we typically we tend to talk about a lot of ultramarathon stuff. It does not take a lot of time to be successful in the ultramarathon game. We like to idolize all of these people out there that run 25, 30, 40 hours a week and train that much and stuff like that. Even for me, even for Sally, who's super busy. I mean, if you can get in 6 to 9 hours a week of training, you can do a lot of really cool shit that you probably don't think you can do. It really doesn't take that much. In the increment that you can improve beyond that initial time, you got to decide how valuable that really is at the end of the day. Yeah, you can train 20 hours a week, but you know what? If that's going to improve your Leadville time 10 minutes, is that really that valuable to you to be spending that extra 8 hours of time going out and being away from your family and all this stuff? So that's the other thing that people need to come and think about is it really doesn't take that much time for most normal people to be reasonably successful in endurance sports.
But make that time count,
good.
right? Those 6 to 9 hours should be quality and should have a purpose to those runs, and not just plodding
That's
along
coaching.
day in and day out.
That's coaching, right?
And I'll never stray. I know people get so annoyed when I say this, and not everyone is, has even the body to get up at the wolf hour, but I am such a big fan, and you have to figure that out. Are you a night owl or an early riser? And some people are both. And then there's the rare person who actually does pretty well in 4 or 5 hours, and they just can. Huge gift right there.
Okay.
But I will never stray from the fact that getting up early makes a massive differess. Get up at 4.
Definitely want to tackle the sleep question, but for now I
Game
have
changer.
Laura on, who
What is
has
up,
a question.
Laura? It's good to see you again, Laura.
I think I can't think of two
Laura's
better
my
people to
friend.
answer her question. So Laura, take it away.
So my question is mostly for Sally, but Koop, please jump in.
Koop has a lot of experience with this.
Perfect. So I have been roped into being medical for a buddy of mine who is put in for bad water. So yeah. So I am a corpsman in the Navy. So I mean, obviously I do have medical background, but I'm just help.
Is he in bad water for sure?
I have props for this answer. I have props for this answer.
I don't even think they posted the names, but
no, not yet. I mean, he just finished. He did the Triple Crown last year. So
awesome.
Yeah, so that's a thing.
So what is your question then?
So I guess just so I'm in Virginia. I can't get out to California. I just don't have access to train in that kind of heat. I mean, I'm not even sure. I have no idea how. Oh, wow.
Jason's done Badwater. Jason is.
Oh, not only has he done Badwater, has he crewed at Badwater, but he is a preeminent foot care expert. And I believe this is where he might be going with this. Correct me if I'm
well,
wrong.
she asked about heat first, Jason.
Yeah, she lives in Virginia. She doesn't have access
Which
to.
I think heat training is a whole nother subject we can talk about. You know, it's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. It's frustrating when people think they have to do 4 months of wearing beanies and 2 storm jackets to heat train, when the protocols for heat training are not that long and are similar in some ways to altitude training. You don't need to do and many times heat training absolutely destroys people's systems if you do it wrong. And they show up to a start line or an event severely dehydrated. Their systems are broken down and tired, and they get halfway into their race and they don't know why they're bonking. So heat training should be done right. I highly recommend that people do research and understand it, because like altitude, some people just do not do well in altitude. Like some people get really sick at 5,000 feet. Some people like crumble when it's 85 degrees out. So first it's easing into it, learning about your specific body and how you operate. But don't fool yourself into thinking that because you live in a cold area where there's not a lot of heat, or it's more humid than it is dry heat, that you're at a disservice. You're not. Anyone can heat train anywhere. This is so great about it. There's a lot of advantages too. But Jason, go ahead and hop in on that, because I know that you and I actually talked briefly about heat management and how important that is.
Yeah, when I first started, I mean, Badwater was one of my first forays into the ultramarathon world, and
which is incredible as your first. Who does that?
Yeah, exactly.
Jason.
So one of the things that struck me was the incredibly elaborate array of things that athletes would do to prepare for the heat. And it didn't border on the absurd. It actually was absurd, where they would not only, roll their treadmill into their laundry room, they would turn the heaters on in their laundry room. And not only would they turn their heaters on in the laundry room, they'd turn their dryer on in the laundry room. And not only would turn their dryer on in the laundry room, they'd point the vent at their face to mimic the hot air that is so notorious for Badwater. And not only would they do that, they would do that while wearing a down jacket and down pants. And not only would they do that, they would do that and not drink for 3 hours. So, I mean, that, and those things get passed colloquially down from Badwater generation to Badwater generation and Badwater generation. And it's very unfortunately so, because as Sally mentioned, if you want to look at the actual scientific evidence for how to properly heat train, of which there is a lot out there, this is not one of those areas that we have to, we're always going to find a little nuance on it. But by and large, we flushed a lot of this stuff out. The protocols are very simple and they're very short. We do know that heat acclimation is an acute process, meaning it takes it unfolds over the course of days, not weeks. And all you really need is about anywhere from 6 to maybe 10 days at the most, using a sauna for 20 to 30 minutes. That's the simplest way that you can do it. And you'll get 90 to 99% of the way there just with that. Passively in the sauna, you don't have to wheel your treadmill in there. You don't have to do jumping jacks in there. You don't have to do step ups on the sauna bench and have everybody turn around and look at you like an idiot or anything like that. You don't have to do any of these crazy things. Just go in the sauna.
All the things, man. I've seen all these things and I just die. You don't have to layer up in 5 different, Western States training drives me crazy every year. I'm like, no, what are you doing? 10 days before the race, you're doing that?
So first off, you're doing the right thing by being a crew wanting to be prepared for the event, because the crew gets jacked up more than the runners.
It is an
exhausting. They have to get rescued more than the runners. That is 100%. Hands down true. Yeah.
So kudos for you. If you're really nervous about it, and this is what I do from a pragmatic standpoint with my athletes, is do 1 round of that sauna work about 8 weeks out from the event. And you're doing it 8 weeks out from the event for 2 reasons. Is one, you're kind of using it, to Sally's point, as a little bit of a litmus test for how you are going to react. So you understand what your tolerability is. You do it 8 weeks from out from the event, and then in those intermittent weeks leading up to the event, you might get in like twice a week or 3 times a week, just kind of to top off. And then leading into the event, where you want to really make sure that you have that heat acclimation dialed in, you're going to go in for like the last 7 days or something around there. That is a good way to take the pressure off of you and not leave it all at the very last minute. So from an athlete standpoint, for the athletes out there that are listening, that are preparing for hot weather events, one of the detriments to leaving it to all at the last minute is you really don't know how you're going to react, and you can really screw it up leading up into a race. And so by doing one round in advance, you can kind of tweak those things a little bit and figure out what your individual tolerance is. And plus, there's probably a small repeated like dose effect by doing those two. So very, very keep it really simple. You'll get 90 to 100% of the way there with 6 to maybe 10 days of some sort of sauna acclimation. If you don't have sauna, you can use a hot water bath, but that's really all you need.
Mhm.
Can I ask one more question then?
Laura.
If what have you seen the most in terms of like, I mean, obviously it's heat related, but as someone going in from the, being the medical person on his team, like what's like one thing?
I've got a cheeky answer. It's people being idiots. Like, no, seriously.
No, it's true.
It's
they have
people
no
being
basis
idiots.
or facts or reason why they're doing it.
It's people being idiots, and they don't realize that it's 135
Or they do it for
minutes.
social media.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, like it isn't who can wear the most jackets and run in 100-degree heat for 4 hours. That is not, you're gonna destroy yourself.
Well, I'm talking about for the race though. Like, and specifically if you're crewing for the race, just don't be an idiot. Realize that the runners are going really slow and you're in a friggin' car. So don't wreck the car, don't lock your keys out of the car, and don't get hurt crossing the road. You kind of do those things and you can't really screw up. Like all of the nutrition and, all that kind of stuff, like the runners got to be able to communicate with their crew and like take care of that stuff. And the thing is because you crew so often, you have a chance to course correct. So if you like epically screw something up, you're going to see your runner in like 10 minutes anyway. So it's like you just kind of fix it. I would, however, since I went to the great painstaking trouble of finding my visual aid, invest in a really good foot care kit. This is all foot care. I bring this out to every single ultramarathon I go to. I know how to use every single piece of tape and tincture and blade and everything in there. You can get away with you can do a lot with just some very simple Kinesio Gold tape. So you know what that is. You know how to manipulate that. That and some lube and some good scissors will take you a very, very long way in terms of patching up blisters and fixing general things.
What are blisters?
Yeah, what are blisters?
Excellent. Laura, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Laura. Good luck. You're doing the right
See
thing.
you, Laura.
Yeah. Let's answer some questions from the chat. I know a bunch of them have stacked up. If we could breeze through a couple of them or keep them tight. Let's see. Somebody asked, Deb Runs Far asked, for the coaches, what are the biggest challenges your athletes are currently having? Has it changed in this pandemic era?
I'll go first since Sally's
Yeah,
being
I know
quiet.
Deb.
That is
Deb's
so
awesome.
weird.
I bet most people know Deb. She's like at every race volunteering or crewing. She's an incredible human being. She is. She's so amazing. And she's training for Cocodona.
Oh, wow. Cool. Well, I'll see you there.
Yeah. Wait, are you doing that
Wait,
too?
is that the big race for you?
Yeah.
We
I'm
never
doing
got to you.
Cocodona.
Oh yeah, because I know
Nice.
you're doing Hard Rock and Cocodona this year.
Yeah, no.
Oh my gosh, Jason, you're a beast, man.
Glutton for punishment.
Jason always goes big. Always.
Glutton for
Dude,
punishment.
Cocodona sounds incredible. It sounds
Yeah,
incredible.
I was driving back from Javelina, and that's when I was like, I'm going to do this race because drive back, or the way that I have to drive back is kind of along the course. So I was like, this is going to be pretty cool.
Wow.
So I'll steer us back on track here. So to answer the question, I think it's really hard to generalize that because everybody has had their own everybody has really had their own experience. It's fairly easy to trivialize it into, oh, all the races went away and I lost my mojo and I'm like not motivated and all this other stuff. And I don't know whether I think that's probably beating a dead horse right now, because the races are kind of like coming back online. But if I were to generalize it, people are just kind of lost with like what's next, which is kind of weird because you've been waiting for what's next for like 24 months, but they like look at the landscape, they're like, oh, everything's back. Like, what do I do now? You know, it's like, well, you've had like 2 years to think about this. Like, you don't have an answer. I don't know where to exactly steer you. But I found that helping athletes craft that has definitely come to the forefront across not only me, but a lot of other coaches that I interface with, because of this relatively dramatic shift from a limited number of options to now more to virtually unlimited options outside of the really hard kind of lotteries to get through. And it all comes down to a very simple principle, in my opinion, and that is one of emotional engagement. If you can go and dig into Ultra Sign Up or whatever other, race platform of your choice, and you start to hone down those events into the ones that just pull at your heartstrings. I'm going to sound like Sally now.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, man, that's it. What gets you excited?
They start to pull. They start to pull at your heartstrings and give you like butterflies in your stomach, and there's a real emotional connection to go there. Like, irrespective of the distance or time of year or whatever, work on all those logistics later, right? Work on all those stuff later. Figure out what is truly like, what, for whatever reason, landscape.
What sets your heart on fire?
Yeah, exactly. And that sounds so cliche,
but it's
seriously,
true.
if I guarantee you out there, I've taken athletes through this exercise, like with me kind of help guiding them and using Ultra Sign Up as the conduit for this. If you start to filter that down and get to some races and then go on to the race website and look at the landscape and look at, people's race reports, and it takes time, right? I'm not saying it gets solved like in an hour or anything like that. Eventually some themes emerge that are very powerful, where the athlete will say, yes, that is really cool. Those are the things to pull on right then and right there. So like, you use your gut, use your emotion with these things. And you might not be able to sign up for the exact one thing that you really want to do, but that's going to provide clues to what else to work for. All the training takes care of itself from there. Once you're super engaged with something, once you've got that emotional engagement, all of the training, you'll wake up at 4 a.m. like Sally was talking about earlier. You'll go and hit the weight room, whatever your coach says, like all of that stuff. If you have that emotional engagement, all that stuff takes care of itself.
I love that. It's so good. I'm going to add one thing to that. And I know that Jason has seen this too. I think one of the greatest challenges that I'm seeing with athletes across the board is patience. I think because of the shift in the racing, there's almost like this anxiousness that, well, I don't want to build. I just want to do the giant thing. So I need to run 100 miles right away. I need to run and I need to do like 8 of them right away. And it's crazy. I mean, I can't believe the messages that come in where people are like, dude, I'm training for like my first 50 ever. I'm going from the half marathon to a 50. And then 2 months later, I'm doing my first 100. And then 2 months after that, I'm doing another 100. And then I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. And I think that we should do the things that get us excited. But I also think that this is a really great time to understand that there are more races than there have ever been in ultra running, and more resources for athletes than there have ever been, which also allows us the opportunity to create the most awesome journey for ourselves. We get to write a really cool story about our running journey. And if you want to get to the end of the story, you have to be patient. And it's not easy, but patient building up, patient in that aerobic base training, which no one likes doing because, oh, it's so boring. But patiently building up your body, addressing anything that, maybe you aren't physically fit in the area that you used to be, 2 years ago, because you really did let everything go. Being okay to graciously tell yourself, like, I'm going to take a little bit longer in my base building and get my body strong. And I want to be able to do well in these races. And so maybe I'm not going to do 8 of them this year. Maybe I'm just going to do a couple, or, so I think that patience, when the floodgates have now opened, is very difficult. And, I love to see athletes strong and injury free. That's my thing. And that has been, that's been hard, is trying to pull back on the reins when people don't want to build.
Okay, we have a question from the chat. Eric Paramond. I'm sure you guys get this a ton, but the solo long run for training for 100 mile versus the back-to-back. How do you talk about this? How do you prescribe these workouts to your athletes?
You mean like one really long run versus the back-to-back run?
I believe that's what he's asking. The solo long weekend runs for 100 miler or a double.
Yeah. Like the Saturday 30 and then Sunday 20, or like just going out for 40 miles on Saturday, or however it's when I first came into the ultra running scene, all that I found, and this is hilarious, was like
back-to-back
6 miles on Monday, 6 miles on Wednesday, 6 miles on Friday. And then it was like 40 miles on Saturday, 50 miles on Sunday. I was like, wow, like that's kind of crazy. And what people do this, but that was like that was the old school way of doing it. The ultra running was only about the back-to-back long run, period.
Yeah, so
it depends on the athlete. Should we go there? Should we start there?
Well, I'll start with the fundamentals, because the fundamentals are kind of my strong suit. So the kind of what the question is really rooted in is, do you want to design one training session with a very high load, or do you want to design 2 training sessions that, when you add them together, have the same volume? And I always use volume of time, not volume of miles.
I love that.
And what is better? So is it better to concentrate that load onto one, or is it better to split that load up into 2 doses? And I don't think that from a programming standpoint, you're limited to those kind of black and white choices, but that's how the question is always presented. Do I want to do one super long run or 2 runs that are kind of equal to that? I think in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, having 2 runs that are eventually going to be equal to or close to the one long run is a better strategy. Now, those 2 runs don't have to be equal, but here's why. Is while I'm an absolute believer in the concentration of workload phenomenon that we see in athletics, and what that means is, if you take an athlete that, let's just say they have, I'm going to make the math really easy for me because I'm not very smart. Let's just say they have 7 hours a week to train, and you give them 1 hour a day, right? So you're evenly spreading out that budget across the entire week. And then you compare that with the exact same athlete that has 7 hours a week, and you give them 2 hours one day and nothing the next day, and then 2 hours the next day and then nothing the next day, and then 2 hours the next day and then nothing the next day, and then 1 hour on the final day. So both of those have 7 hours. Wait a minute. 2, 4, 6, 7. Yeah, I got that right. Yeah, there we go. Hey, I didn't even need a calculator. Both of those athletes have the same training load per week, right? 7 hours. The latter athlete, the one that has concentrated their training load into fewer discrete sessions, will almost always improve more than the other one. And that is because of this concentration of load effect, where the load is more stressful the longer that the session is. And this is science, right? I mean, they've done many studies in many different formats to look at this type of training architecture. And in general, I'm a favor of that. I like the lopside. I like the lopside training load to try to take advantage of that. But the long run is one where I will generally make more exceptions to. And that is because it is so stressful that you typically lose time on the back end of it, recovering from that you could be spending elsewhere. So then when you zoom the lens out, between that between the 1 day and the 2 day scenario, that 1 day being super big and those 2 days having the volume spread out, yeah, that 1 day is probably going to be the better training effect. But when you zoom that out on the order of like a month, it typically either comes out in the wash or is more favorable to splitting up that long run into two different sessions, because you can recover quicker and get more quickly, and you can get more training load placed on the next week and the week after that. So it's important and we go through this exercise all of the time, that when we go through these kind of compare and contrast this or that you always take that situation and say, okay, what is the impact? What is the downstream impact of that the next week and the week after that? From a really I know that's like a lot of philosophical nonsense to people, but from a very practical perspective, let's just take an athlete that's going to do an 8-hour long run. They're trying to decide between an 8-hour long run and 2 4s, right? I would say do instead of doing 8 and or 2 4s, do 6 and 2, or do 5 and 3. Something like that, where you can still take a little bit of the advantage of that concentration effect, but not whack yourself over the head with a freaking sledgehammer so that the next week you're taking 3 or 4 days completely off because it's so hard. Philosophically, that's what I'm doing. Not every single time, but way more times than not. It has to be really specific that I'll want to take the opposite approach, where I'll use that one super long run at the expense of taking the next week almost completely off.
Huge fan of that.
I have an email question from Dan. Do you guys have any special recommendations for overweight runners? For example, does speed work have negative effects if you're overweight? Should overweight runners prioritize low and slow building aerobic days? Should strength training be approached any differently?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, is it, well, I guess it was an email, because sometimes is this athlete at a starting point and he's looking to lose weight in his training? Because your training looks a little bit different if your goal is first to lose the weight. Or is it that he's just, he's like, this is, I'm a heavier weight. This is who I am, and I'm going to stay this way.
I'm laughing my ass off because coaches have the hardest time stylizing these answers because they always want to individualize it so much. And it's just so, for those of you that are kind of wondering, it's like, well, just answer the freaking question. That's why, is because we work with individuals, not with
So true.
Not with like an entire like the information that we are generally disseminating is to a specific individual in the context of, this is how I'm going to coach Billy Yang. This is how I'm going to coach Sally McRae. Not this, generic, not to, with all due respect to the person asking the question, but
let me take a stab in the dark and assume it's a moderately experienced, heavy set runner who probably doesn't have intentions of losing weight, or this is just a reality that for whatever reason, this is a frame that they were given. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that my first response for that is, I don't know if he's asking, like, is he deterred from doing anything? He's not. I just think that when it comes down to putting priority in his training, I would definitely make sure that there's a priority on strength training. All the joints, getting the muscles strong around all the joints to endure for a long time, because you're just putting more stress on joints. And having coached for a long time, I owned it was a women's fitness business, and I had women of all shapes and sizes. And when I would prescribe workouts, I'd do the workouts live with these ladies. And because they were all different size, I had some women that came and they're like, I'm trying to lose 100 pounds. And then I would have other ladies that, they were very fit and they're ripped and they're super fast. And so giving one workout at 5 a.m. live to all these people, I was constantly giving modifications. And the number one thing that I was told over and over again by the ladies that were overweight was that their joints hurt. And so, the jump roping or like trying to move faster, like it just was very unpleasant. And so what I've always focused on with them is like, I don't care how fast you're going, but I'm going to help you get through to the end of this workout as best you can. And so we're going to go at the pace that feels best for you. And so when it comes to running, feet landing right under the center of the body mass is so important. The bigger your mass, that you're not doing these overstriding and trying to push your body beyond, any type of thing that's going to cause too much stress. But then when it came to just the exercises, I really wanted these people to be strong in their back and their hips and their, the quads, like all the things that support that weight. They're going to feel it in their knees and their ankles a little bit more. And so the strength training is going to be very important. And in turn, what's cool about the strength training, you're increasing, it helps with bone mass, helps with metabolism, all of those things. And you just feel better strength training. So whatever distance, you can absolutely do it. Make sure that strength training is a part of what you do, and make sure that your running gait exhibits a strong, supportive, that foot right under the center of your body mass is just going to make you feel better too. So
I think one of the things that Sally touched on that's important in this context is when you have a large body mass, and that's irrespective of whether that's muscle mass or fat mass, you
Yes.
have a little
Yeah.
you have a little bit less room for error on the programming side of things, because running is such an impactful sport. So every time you hit the ground, you're hitting the ground with between 2.5 to 2.7 times your body weight.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody can go run the math on that, what that means for an extra 10 pounds, extra 15 pounds, or kind of whatever. But my point with that is it's an impactful sport. And a lot of times we see very light and fast runners be able to get away with bad programming, whether that's too much volume too quickly, or too much intensity too frequently, or kind of what these very stereotypical, training errors that are always easy to find in retrospect, but in real time, sometimes you get blinded to it. That's another question. But you see that and they don't have to pay the injury penalty because they're so light, right? Mm-hmm. Heavier runners, whether that weight is driven through muscle mass or fat mass or wearing a big backpack or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. There's just less tolerance for the programming error. And so the advice that I have for heavier runners is err on the side of being more conservative with your overall volume and your volume ramps, because you're not going to have as much of a cushion to work with when you are making those errors, and the penalty for failure tends to show up more quickly from an injury perspective.
Koop, I know you get this question a lot. We have Carl coming on to ask the old elevation training at sea level. If your goal race is at elevation, how do you
have we had Carl before?
I don't know.
Carl, have you been on here before?
It's the mustache that gives him away.
I feel like I remember Carl.
Yeah, hi guys.
Carl, have you been on the show before?
I have, yeah. I think I might have figured out.
I remember your wall, dude. I remember your wall.
I'm glad it didn't take me as long to connect this time.
Yeah, and I remember that too. It's good to see you again. Mustache is looking strong.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I like the Run PA hat too.
Thank you. I'm
very cool.
Valley Forge, Pennsylvania.
So go ahead and ask your question.
All right. So I'm sorry if you guys get this question a lot, but I'm running a 100-miler out in Wyoming this summer. It's
awesome.
Gonna be my first race at elevation. Obviously I'm coming from sea level, so I was wondering if you guys had any tips or advice on how to prepare for the elevation and or just what to expect.
Jason, go ahead and tackle
that's a
that.
common
Jason's
question,
training
so
for Hard Rock.
It is.
It's a good
it's a great question.
Yeah.
Super common question. We see a lot with Leadville athletes, because Leadville is very, it's just very beginner friendly, right? It gets a lot of new people into ultra running, which is awesome, and they get a lot of flatlanders. And then
smacks them in the face when they go to Hope.
Smacks them in the face. So no doubt the elevation is a challenge. However, it's a challenge for everybody. I mean, I live at 6,300 feet, and when I go up to Leadville, I have to be very conscientious of things. The number one thing that you can do, number one thing by far, without a shadow of a doubt, is to get as fit as possible before the race.
Okay.
Train your ass off. Do all the right things in training. Get your cardiovascular system super tuned. Don't take any shortcuts. Be really smart with it, because your fitness is going to carry you 95% of the way there. Outside of that, you have to realize that your nutrition program is going to have less, I've used this term a lot for whatever reason tonight, it's going to have less bandwidth, because more of your physiological resources are taken up just walking down the trail, right? It's just harder. I mean, everybody's had this experience when they go to altitude, right? People, ski season right now in Colorado, and people are coming from Texas out to Breckenridge, and they walk up the stairs in their condo and they're out of
10,000
breath.
feet, yeah.
That happens to everybody,
Yeah.
right? And so what that from a physiological point of view, what that means is more of your physiological resources are consumed with just normal stuff, walking down the trail, easy efforts and things like that. And because a little bit of your bottom end of your physiology is kind of absorbed with the natural altitude that's there, it places a premium on having a very well dialed nutrition strategy. You have fewer, you have less room for error there, because you're going to pay a higher penalty, because you can't reduce your physiological intensity like you can at sea level. And so put another premium, and everybody should do this anyway, put another premium on really dialing in your nutrition program. Every single run over 2 hours in the last 8 weeks leading up to this race, you should be practicing your race day nutrition program. Every single one. You can't do it enough. Go over everything you're going to eat and drink, dial it in, make sure you're super confident with it. Those two things, I think you can get there. We can go over altitude tents, and do you want to do an altitude camp and things like that ad nauseum. And those are all valuable. However, it's 1 up, 2 up, 10 down. And what I mean by that is, if you get everything right doing an altitude camp or an altitude intervention or using an altitude tent, you might get a couple of, maybe get a couple percent difference. But your penalty for getting it wrong, which is way easier than getting it right, is a 10% decline. You sleep worse. You end up having way too much stress on your body. There's a whole host of other things that can kind of go on when you're introducing these interventions. You have to be very, very, very cautious. The one thing, if you're insistent, hey, I have to kind of get this monkey off my back, go out to altitude in advance. Do a 2 or 3 day training camp, and you're not doing that for the physiological benefit because you need more time. You're doing that to see how your body gets accustomed to the altitude, so that when you go out there and you walk up the stairs in your condo, you're not so freaked out that you're out of breath.
Yeah.
You've been through that experience before. You sleep better before the race. You're going to have more confidence. You've been there and done that. That's the reason that you go out to Leadville when they do the Leadville camp and things like that. It's not to get the physiological benefit.
Yeah.
It's to see the course first and foremost, but it's also to understand how your body becomes accustomed to the change in altitude, so that when you have to do it when all the chips are down, it's not going to freak you out. So those are the things that you can do.
So
Keep
good,
it
Jason.
super simple, train as hard as you can, get your nutrition dialed, maybe think about going out to altitude.
Awesome.
So
Really
good.
appreciate it.
Yeah, 100% co-sign that. Prior to my first Leadville in 2017, that was my biggest concern too, how my body would react to altitude. And I think just having that knowledge of going out there a month in advance, although the adaptations wouldn't carry over, I just knew, at least in the back of my mind, when I was trying to get to bed for that ungodly 4 a.m. race start, that I had at least had that. There wasn't a surprise around the corner of how my body would respond at altitude at 10,000 feet and beyond.
It's been really interesting. Can I go off on a little bit of a tangent for just a couple of minutes, Billy, and you can cue up the next
That's this
question?
entire podcast, man. Go ahead.
So let me, I think this will be interesting for the listeners to kind of like paint the context of, as well, I want an altitude tent, right? So when I first started coaching, altitude training was all the rage. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The Olympic Training Center is right in my back door. I have a lot of colleagues there and have for many, many years. And the Olympic Training Center used to, and they still do this, but it's less frequent. They used to put on an altitude symposium every year where all of the coaches, mainly from the endurance sports, but also from other sports, from all the coaches from all the different sports would kind of come in, and all the physiologists would come in, and we would hammer this thing home for like 4 days straight of nothing but staring at, bar graphs and distribution, charts and who responded to this and hemoglobin dissociation graphs and things. I mean, just all this stuff. And I bang my head against the table going, oh my God, I can't believe this is doing this. This is like in the mid 2000s, and it got super popular. And you started to see the rise of portable hypoxic tents, Hypoxico and other companies. We've since learned that getting that right is extremely tricky. And people tend to trivialize that into responders and non-responders, and it's not quite that simple, because you have to figure out how people respond, what sort of altitude do they respond to, what the length of altitude they actually respond to, and it is incredibly individual. When I do this for an athlete, and I'm working with them individually, normally we're doing blood profiling before they actually go up to altitude. We're doing blood profiling when they're actually at altitude. We're controlling and monitoring their training load the entire time. And it's a very intricate process. And I don't profess to say that we get it right more than half the time, to be honest with you. And so the landscape of that, and this is my point with this, the landscape of using these specific altitude interventions to improve performance has shifted dramatically to one that was relatively de facto, or I guess more universally used in the early 2000s, to now it's very surgically used with very specific athletes in very specific situations under really expertise type of guidance. You're going to find the athletes that just wing it, and they, for whatever reason, that's absolutely going to be stories out there. But more often than not, in the high performance community, it is a very surgical process nowadays, which is markedly different than it was 15 years ago. And it just goes to show you just how much we've learned in that interim time.
Carl, you good?
We could talk
I'm
about
good.
altitude for a long time. It's
Yeah,
so
I mean,
good.
seriously.
But
Yeah.
Jason, do you want to make sure for everyone else watching, should I be running with a sock in my mouth?
Or get one of those altitude masks.
altitude
Yeah.
mask. Oh,
We
hey,
look
here
like
we go.
Bane
I got a
from
plug.
If I breathe in beach
I got-
air, but I put a sock in my mouth, I'm altitude, right?
Shameless plug for my podcast. This is going to come out in 2 days on Thursday. I have an interview with Nick Tiller, who is the author of the Skeptic's Guide to Sports Science, as well as a columnist.
I love stuff like that.
And he's also a columnist in the Skeptical Inquirer, as well as an ultramarathoner, as well as has his PhD in cardiopulmonary physiology. And he was also a scientific advisor on my book. And I brought him on the podcast to talk about all of the different breathing things that people do.
So much right now.
The mask, nasal breathing, we go through it all, and it is, I cannot.
Mouth tape.
We didn't go through mouth tape. That's too absurd. We go through the whole thing from a scientific perspective. I mean, even the nitric oxide uptake, that's kind of the foundation of all this nasal breathing. Like, we go through the science of it and then the practical piece of it. So check that out if you want to get dissuaded from having to run around with a sock in your mouth.
All truth right here. I have to say, Jason Koop is one of the few people, if I listen to a podcast when I run, I listen to his, because he's such a geek and I love it.
This one's good.
I learned so much on your podcast. Like, it's great knowledge. That one will be very interesting, because it is something that I see all the time. I mean, I see it even more now, like in the gym and even running down by the beach, just all these different things that people, are wearing. It's good discussion.
Hey, so I alluded to it earlier. A lot has been made in recent years, thankfully, about the benefits of sleep. How do you talk to your athletes about the role sleep plays in overall recovery.
Okay,
and-
before we dive into that,
yeah.
Billy, there are so many people in the chat room that Jason, so many people in the chat room want to know what your 2022 goals are. Are you racing? Are you adventuring? Where are you going? Come on, like people sign on to the Bailey Yang show. They want to hear from you.
Let me tease it.
Look at him redirect.
Let me tease it because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I do have some exciting plans for 2022. And I think how I'm going to talk about it is on an upcoming video in the coming days. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. But while we have the audience here and still engaged, let's talk about sleep.
Don't pay attention to the title of this show. It's not 2022 goals, guys.
Sleep, Jason.
But watch Billy's 2022 goals film coming to a theater near you.
Sally,
Okay,
you and
sleep.
we have to do a deep dive.
This is going off the rails.
Yeah.
All right, so back to sleep. Who here gets the most sleep? I want to know in the chat room, who here do you think gets the most sleep? Because I'm sorry, but both of you guys are very busy men and you have your hands in so many different things as well. And you guys have both done lots of different adventures and races. And I know that you have gone through seasons in your life where you're not probably getting as much sleep as you should. But I'd love to know who here among us is getting good sleep right now.
Well, I've definitely prioritized good sleep. I have this Aura Ring, which I'm sure Jason will probably, I can't see him right now, but he's probably rolling his eyes hard at. But any little thing I can do to kind of track and monitor my sleep, the quality of sleep, anecdotally and
do you have the Aura Ring? Is that what you're wearing right now? You wearing the Aura Ring? Look at him hide it. He's like,
No, I wear it very proudly. I love that sleep is no longer demonized and that we're not crushing people for not hustling 24/7. Sleep is actually prioritized. And I think there's a huge carryover in running, but I want to hear it from scientific minds.
Okay. So the original, I'm going to bring this back on the rails once again. The original question was, how do you talk to your athletes about sleep?
Okay.
So the first thing is your routine and your habits are far more important than your Aura Ring, Billy. If you're using your Aura Ring to facilitate or to enhance or to be accountable to those routines and habits, then great. But that's how the conversation first starts. Okay, take me through and this is actually what I do with my athletes. Take me through what happens from 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. if you're me, because I go to bed at 8:30. Take me through what happens.
This show needs to end soon.
Yeah, no,
cutting into his bedtime routine.
You really are. And I'm doing all the bad things. I'm looking at a computer screen. I'm getting all my blood pressure's up. But what happens in the 2 hours preceding when you're going to bed? What are you doing? What devices are on? No. This is how I orchestrate that conversation with the athletes.
I can tell you what Billy's doing though, but
but the point is you want to wind down all of the things that are stimulating. And the prototypical ones are your phone. Just put your phone away. Don't try to look at it. Yeah, you can use blue blocker lenses or the blue blocker app or kind of whatever. Just put it away. The second thing is make sure your bedroom is uncluttered.
Dude, that's so good. Yes.
So look at your bedroom, and if there's
it's inviting and calming.
If there's so I
sleep and sex, right?
Yeah, like sleep and sex. That's what it's seriously. No, I mean, I've talked to a lot of high-end physiologists about this, and they say the exact same thing. Your bedroom should be for sleep and sex. That's it. If your computer's in there, if your work's in there, if other things that are not about sleep and sex are in your bedroom, just freaking get them out. So the reason that I start with that is in my opinion, in many other people's opinion, there's too much of an overemphasis right now on a lot of the sleep scores and the recovery scores that are getting generated by the devices. And first off, there's no basis for many of those, especially the recovery algorithms that are out there. So you don't
Oh my
know
God.
whether you don't know whether
There's one watch. It's like you ran 10 miles, you can recover for
s-
14 days.
they're awful. And I think, but my point with that is that it distracts from the things that are more impactful, which are your habits. So if you focus on the habits first, and then if you happen to have a Whoop strap or an Aura ring or any of the other wearables that can help give you accountability into that, then great. But don't count on the number that you're seeing from that as being the number, as being like this aspirational goal that you should that you should hit, because you can look at all the validation studies. I'll bring in the science right now. They're horrific in terms of how well they actually score sleep. I will say that the new ones that are coming out, the Aura Ring 4, because they started to add in some machine learning on top of measuring movement and measuring heart rate and heart rate variability and temperature. They started to add some machine learning aspects to it as well. The validation studies are getting better, and they're actually more promising. But unless you have that generation with the machine learning, all of the older ones, they're quite frankly shit in terms of how much they're, in terms of the sleep stages and how long each of those sleep stages are. They're a little more promising on just bordering the sleep, saying, okay, you are absolutely asleep for this amount of time. That total amount of time, they're not that bad at for half of the individuals out there, if you wanted to put a percentage on it. But trying to dissect it anymore into the REM sleep and all this other stuff.
Hold on, Koop. Let me pause you there, because I'm asking more, like, we're going down. We took a little off ramp with devices. I'm asking more about, is there a direct correlation now between the length and quality of sleep and how somebody recovers? Say you're training for an ultra marathon, you've run the said 30, 20 mile back to back. Like, should you prioritize more sleep at the end of each session? Like, talk about it more directly in terms of ultra marathon and ultra marathon recovery terms.
Well, let me put it this way. I don't think you should prioritize it higher any one day or the other, because it should be the highest priority.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of recovery, so if you look at all of the different recovery modalities out there, massage, the Normatec boots, Billy, that you're so fond of, the Theragun.
Why does this always become a personal attack on me?
The Theragun that I have a Theragun, right? Mm-hmm. All of these other things, they pale in comparison to their recovery efficacy as compared to sleep. Now, if you've got your sleep dialed, getting 8 to 9 hours, 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. Yeah, let's look at getting in the. Yeah, if you can do that, who does that?
I'm like, wow.
if you, Sally's like, that sounds really nice. mother of two, professional athlete, all this kind of other stuff. But my point with that is like, if you're, get your sleep wired in first, get 8 hours a night, set up your bedroom so it is peaceful, it is comfortable, work on your wind down routine. That's a lot of work right there.
It totally is.
You get that dialed, then worry about your friggin' massage on Thursday and all this. With all due respect to the massage therapists out there, I like you guys, but let's be real, you know. So yes, Billy, it absolutely, it should not only be a high priority, I think it is the king and queen maker of recovery.
Okay. I realize we're a couple of hours in, or almost a couple of hours in. So I want to be sensitive to that and the people watching, especially on the East Coast. Let's start to wind things down. And I want our final topic to be about diet. As you know, come New Year's Day.
The final topic's not going to be about you. People signed in for you, Billy Yang. I'm going to say your middle name because people are asking in the chat again.
I will disown you. We are long overdue for our one-on-one catch up over the past like 7-8 months. We'll reserve that for that time. We were supposed to do it in
Thailand. That was supposed to be over Thai food.
Well, somebody flaked on Thailand. But anyway. So this is when people start to pay attention to a lot of, like, I don't want to say fad diets, but I think this is the time of year where people will start to pay attention a little bit more on like how they can improve their diet, how they can eat better. So I just, maybe without getting too in the weeds, just if there's a general thing you want to say about dieting and maybe potentially some of the pitfalls of following too far down a
Okay.
particular type of
I
diet.
can say something short and sweet. So like my approach always, I love food.
Yes,
I
this is why I love you, Sally.
I know. Billy's one of my favorite persons to go eat with because he is one of the few persons that can actually keep up with me
Yes.
with how much food I consume. Like, I really believe that food should be seen as so much of the reasons why there's lots of diets is because we're not looking at food in the right way. It is fuel. It is a gift, and it's something that is going to allow you to do all the things that you love stronger and longer. And unfortunately, when we take food and make it so complicated, that is also where we see a lot of lacking in our physical abilities because we then are nutrient deficient. We're not getting enough calories. We're bonking. All those things have to do because we're just not getting enough of it. And we're not paying attention to the fact, too, that all of our bodies are different. So when people tell me like, dude, I'm good on 100 calories an hour, and they also weigh about 60 pounds less than me and have way less muscle mass than I do. I need at least 300 calories an hour to move well. For somebody else, that is not going to make them feel great. They're going to be throwing up eating that much. So you need, and Jason touched on this earlier, it's so important that you practice eating in those 2+ hour runs, that you figure that out. When it comes to your everyday eating, I'm not a fan of diets, and I've talked about this extensively in other podcasts. One of the reasons is because I started traveling the world at a really young age and seeing what a gift food is to people around the world. And it should not be something that we hold over other people and say, I'm better than you because I eat this way. I just don't believe in that. So food should never make somebody else feel bad. We should be grateful for it. We should share it. We should consume it to make our bodies feel great. So I'm a big believer in eating all the foods. And if you eat something that was grown or had a mother, you're just going to feel better. That doesn't mean that I don't eat sugar. I love donuts too. But I think that my plate is always filled with mainly things that are identifiable and weren't made by a man or from a box or processed for the most part. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Coop,
Just
anything
eat
you want to add?
Just eat less shit that comes in packages.
Right? There's the New Year's resolution. That's what it should be.
Yeah, not nothing, right? You can have stuff that comes in a package every once in a while. But if you really want to just eat less of it. I mean, I hate to trivialize it because I could go on and on and on about this because it's just
I love food topics.
It's just so polarizing right now, and it's really unfortunate because there are a lot of there are a lot of disingenuous arguments that kind of get thrown around primarily on social media, and I get involved in these for whatever reason every once in a while, and it's really a shame the amount of intellectual dishonesty that some people have with twisting other people's arguments to or for something when it really just has to be very, very simple. Eat stuff that's grown out of, what did you say? That was grown out of the ground, or how's a mother? I'm going to use it.
Yeah, yeah.
grown out of how's a mother, and eat less stuff. And eat less stuff from packages.
It's pretty basic. I mean, the food and diet industry. Let's be honest, you guys. So much stuff comes down to money. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Every single year, there's the new, latest, and greatest diet that's going to make you feel and look better than ever before. But at the end of the day, every great diet is based on whole foods. And when you can get the whole foods in and you're drinking that, you're drinking your water too, all of us aren't drinking enough water, you're just going to feel better. And I'll tell you what, when I trained for Badwater in 2018, and then I trained for it in 2001, in 2018, I did body fat testing. I was so stringent with really paying attention to every single thing that I was eating. I knew how much I weighed. In 2021, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to feel like I'm just going to go on this basis. I feel if I'm super hungry, I'm going to eat what sounds good to me. And whether that's salmon and rice or a big bacon double cheeseburger, I ate it. I ate everything that I wanted as much as I wanted. And I was in the gym as much as I wanted, running and sleeping. I did everything based on feel. And when it comes down to it, when you listen to your body and what it needs and don't pay so much attention to a lot of the junk that we're seeing on social media, and you do diligence to do your homework. So I did a lot of studying this year too. I studied so much on nutrition, heat training, all that stuff, like the good factual scientific stuff. Man, I learned so much. And then it became personal to me. Like training became personal to who I was and the body that I specifically have. And I realized, oh my gosh, like I need to eat way more. I need to drink a little bit more. I need more potassium. I need more magnesium. And so, diets, when it comes down to it, the first 3 letters of that word are die. That's usually what ends up happening to a diet. It dies out because it was not meant for you to live on 365 days a year. There's nothing wrong with tightening up and reset. And I've told some of my athletes that before. I say, hey, take 3 days and just write down what you eat. Not to scrutinize yourself, but that's just for you. I don't even want you to show it to me, but take 3 days and write down every single thing that goes in your mouth as a way for you to get an honest picture of actually what you're doing. And don't change it these 3 days. And it's been amazing. The conversations I've had with athletes that are like, dude, I didn't realize like on the days that I'm running 20 miles, I'm actually only eating like 1,400 calories. And half of those calories are during my run.
Gels.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, they feel like bad because it isn't even like a eating disorder. It's not like they're trying to eat less. They're just like, dude, I'm not paying attention. And that's one of the biggest problems with anything. We don't pay attention. We think we have everything dialed in. And then when we're honest with ourselves, we write it down, we see it on paper and we track it. Wow, you can really learn a lot about yourself. So if you're going to track your food, you're going to pay attention to what you're eating, then do it as a way to learn about yourself and see where you can improve. And then go back to what always worked since the beginning of time, eating the food that was here since the beginning of time.
Koop, I think now's an opportune time for you to quickly share your famous rice ball recipe with the audience.
Oh,
wow.
Do you dip it in the soup, in the bouillon?
No, like that. So the background of this, it's actually kind of poignant, right? So when I was first starting coaching, I got into this like really big bike race here in Colorado Springs, and I was very ill prepared. And at the last minute, I realized I realized I did not have any nutrition for this really big bike ride that was going to take me like 12 hours or something like that. So I was like, shit, what do I do? And so there just happened to be a Krispy Kreme donut around the corner from my house.
Yes, I love it.
So I took a few sandwich bags, like the little pleated sandwich bags.
Yeah.
And I took them to the Krispy Kreme when they were hot. And I just shoved them into the sandwich bag. And I tied like an overhand knot with it. And I made a little ball with it because they were very malleable.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'd just take them out of my pocket and I'd tear the top off of it and I'd squeeze it out like a gel, right? Because that's all I had because I was completely underprepared. Well, I took that form factor. I took that form factor of this smushed up donut in a sandwich bag. And I combined it with a rice recipe that one of my colleagues had given me years later. And all it is cooked basmati rice, eggs, bacon, eggs, bacon, Parmesan cheese, and salt. That's one version.
Sounds good right now.
And another version, if you're a vegetarian, is
we haven't had dinner yet, Sally.
Yeah, exactly. Is rice, rice, eggs, and soy sauce. So if you don't want to put meat in or whatever, so you can have either one of those two, and you can salt it to taste and, kind of experiment around with it. But the point is that rice would go into that sandwich bag, just like those old Krispy Kreme donuts, and you can tear it off and you can squeeze it in your mouth like a gel. It just happens to be that a reasonable portion size of, maybe my first two knuckles here or something like that for the people that are watching the YouTube version is about the same as you would get in a gel, about 100 calories. And so anyway, I've been using that ever since that point in time, and it's one of my go-to ones. Yeah, the recipes in the book and a lot of it's
and rice is good for soaking things up in that belly too, especially in the later stages of the race, right?
Just the way you put it is making me laugh. Sally, I assume you're still a Spring Energy athlete. How much do you balance in the context of an actual race? Do you balance like a spring gels versus real food?
Yeah. So
But spring is real food. You look at
I
all their
know.
marketing, that's what they say. It's real food. I'm
It
sorry.
is. It is real food. It's made. I went to the lab and watched them make it. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, they have a banana peeler that'll peel like 100 bananas a minute or something like that.
They literally, there's people stirring. Okay, anyway. So I typically will do like Badwater. This last time I had a oh my gosh, I probably had like 60 or 70 of their apple gels.
Mhm.
And then liquid nutrition. So that was one thing that I experimented a lot. In fact, most of the reasons why I would go out to the desert to be in the heat and run was not to heat train. It was to eat. I wanted to see how well I was responding to different temperatures. So I would drive all over SoCal finding 100 degree, 110, and then 120 degree. And it was amazing what my belly was doing. So pretty fascinating. I found that I needed something that that was calories that I didn't know I was digesting, because the hotter it got, it was just really difficult. So I landed on a unflavored starch that blended into water really well. I don't even know if the company's still around, but I found it on Amazon. It's called Vitargo. Jason, do you remember Vitargo?
God, I do remember that.
That stuff used to be
the
so
super starch.
hard, super starch. It was so hard to mix. And so when it got past 115 degrees, I would take that stuff in. I would take in the super starch, unflavored, mix it into water, because I could still get in 300 calories in a bottle and like 60 carbs, 60 grams of carbs. So, and then I am a big believer in, I love real food. And so because for a long time, I was only racing internationally, I made sure that wherever I went, whatever the aid station had, I should be able to eat it. So if I wasn't able to have crew or drop bags or any of that stuff, I needed to eat what was in the aid station. So I'm pretty good at eating real food at aid stations, whether it's raisins, bread, meat and cheese. I've practiced with that stuff for years, but my go-to is always spring. But like Jason said, I practice it in my long runs, because over the years it's changed. I started off with, the waffles and the sports beans and the, all pure sugar stuff. And then after a couple of years, that started making me really sick. And then I transitioned to more whole food type stuff. So.
Jason, Sally, thank you guys so much. I'm gonna, as a way to repay you guys for the time that you dedicated to tonight,
I was joking about that comment.
No, not literally pay. I'm not gonna Venmo you anything, but I do want to give you a plug. Once again, the second edition of Training Essentials for Ultra Running by Jason Koop. It's right there. Go out and get it. Support this guy. There is just heaps and gobs of information. We have just begun to scratch the surface. Thank you again to Jason. You can buy the book on Amazon and directly from your website. Is that correct?
Yep. I bought it on Amazon.
And you can also download the audio version on Audible. Is that correct?
Yeah, the audio version is actually, it's not to plug my own stuff too much, but it's pretty awesome because it's not, first off, I read it.
Oh, I was just going to ask you that, but do you read it?
Excruciating thing I've ever done in my whole life, but that's neither here nor there. But I really, I totally plagiarized David Goggins' style of an audiobook, and I interspersed the read with interviews from domain experts. Yeah. So in the middle of the nutrition chapter, I interview Stephanie Howe about how to set up your nutrition program. In the middle of the mental skills chapter, I interview Dr. Justin Ross, who's a mental skills expert. And it shows up about once every chapter or so. And, the book is, it's technical content, right? So it's not only, it doesn't go over very well in the read. In fact, if you go to Audible's like internal site where you're uploading stuff, they specifically discourage you from creating audiobooks that are of this genre. Like it's like children's books, cookbooks, and technical books, which this would be a technical book. Do not make audiobooks like this because they won't sell very well. So I was like, screw you guys, I'm going to do it anyway.
Good for you.
But anyway, I'm really happy with the way that with the way that it all came out, and it's certainly not just a read for me. I brought in a lot of really good people that I'm very fortunate that they spent some time. It really is I call it a
Labor of
murderer's
love.
row. Well,
Oh.
so like the experts there, it's really a murderer's row. It's a who's who of people in coaching and
Oh.
physiology. It's a really, really, really cool compilation.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to plug that being in the middle of the process myself, I think that it's so important that for people watching and I guess listening later too, coaches pour so much into people. Your whole life, Jason, that's what you've been doing, is just pouring into people. So, if anything is a reason to buy this book, is also showing support for what Jason has done and in this endurance community for so many years and all the athletes that he's helped. Don't only buy the book, but make sure you give a nice review in there too, so that that thing will keep circulating, because that is important. The reviews that you give it's important. And, I think that for all of the work that you put in, whether it's podcasts, you do a lot of stuff for free. So this is just a big thank you. And Jason kept on trying to give me the book for free. He's such a sweetheart. We're friends. That's what friends do. We give our stuff for free. But I told him, I was like, no, I want to this is really hard work. And, I want to buy it. And I want to do a review. You buy it and then you can do a review. So anyway, Jason, thank you for what you've done. When I bought your first one years ago, and it's been just an awesome resource for me, and I really appreciate it, and just who you are in the community. Because when I first started ultra running, there was nothing. So for anyone first coming in, this is the book that you need. So thanks for writing it.
Yeah, thank you for that sentiment, Sally. I appreciate it a lot.
And thank you, Sally. Sally, you have an app including a new challenge coming up. So if you want to take a couple minutes to talk about that.
Yeah, there's a link in my bio on Instagram. You can click it if you want to check it out. But
Yellow Runner.
Yeah, Yellow Runner. But yeah, started an app about 6 months ago, and the focus is strength training. And a lot of it is just encouraging runners to first start out with the body weight stuff and the running strength foundations. But every week there's new workouts, there's a community attached to it, and lots of other perks that actually come with the app. So yeah, that's it.
Sally, since you were so gracious, I have a present for you as we wrap up the podcast.
I almost forgot.
Oh no, that you guys know about that I don't.
Very, 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 very special present. Since you were so nice to me, I'm gonna give an honest plug for your app because it is so amazing. So for those of you listening, this is a little salty. So if you have small kids
Jason
in the room,
and I are friends too.
The kids should be in bed anyway.
The kids should be in bed, but if you have kids in the room or kids in the backyard, please put them away. For all of the YouTube editors and the FCC out there, just turn the volume down for this one specific question. But Sally, this is my plug for your app. Are you ready?
Oh no.
All right, here we go. Runners, are you tired of having scrawny ass arms like the ones where you're going to feel like you're going to pass out by simply opening up a jar of pickles? Ladies, you want a little bit more junk in your trunk? Not just any junk. I'm talking J-Lo junk. Well, I have the solution for you. For the next 6 weeks, have Coach Sally McRae kick your ass into shape and build those guns you've always wanted to take to the gun show. No, not actual guns, you fucking idiots. We can't talk about that shit and not get mad at each other. Things like your arms. You guys know what I'm talking about. Seriously though, Coach Sally's program is for all levels to improve your strength, endurance, and athletic abilities. Coach Sally's 6-week challenge will put you to the test with body weight exercises, dumbbell training sessions, and run workouts, sure to leave you in a sweaty, sloppy mess, drooling on your new $300 Vaporflies. But I assure you, you will come back begging for more. This program is not for the faint of heart or weak-minded. You need to prepare to commit. Your 6-week program will consist of creative, powerful workouts programmed for all levels. No gym? No problem. Coach Sally's got you covered. Her wrecking ball of a program requires minimal equipment. Sign up today at, wait a minute, What's the fucking link? Nobody remembers that shit. Nobody remembers these links and these ads. Just Google it. Go get you some. The Sally McRae Fitness Program is no substitute for medical advice. If you require medical attention, seek the care of a qualified professional. By
Jason, you
participating in
are
the 6-week Sally
amazing.
McRae Strength Program, you agree that you are responsible for your own damn shit. Don't come back bitching and whining because you strained your pinky finger. She don't care.
You strained your pinky finger. Jason, that was amazing.
You're
I
welcome.
love that gift. That was amazing. The fact that you took the time to write that script out.
No,
and
wait
it
a
was
minute.
So witty and clever. Was that just off?
No,
the cuff?
honestly, no. I took the copy from the actual app and I just
Oh my
modified
God,
it.
and modified all the
I
stuff.
don't
Dude,
think I
that
put
was,
that much time into it.
That was freaking amazing and hilarious. Okay, bravo.
Okay.
Bravo. My favorite part of the night. Jason, I'm keeping that forever. I'm glad it's going to live forever in this podcast.
Download the app
You're so
wherever you get
great.
your apps. Buy Jason's
So
book.
awesome.
A quick business here. Well, I should do my own plugs. Check out my YouTube channel by clicking on Billy Yang. The latest video called The Good Life is now up. The responses have been incredible. Thank you guys so much. Also, the Billy Yang podcast.
As they should be.
And I only have literally a few more. These hats have been
I
flying
got
off
one.
the shelf. Thank you, Sally. Pathprojects.com/Billy Yang. This is a one-time, like once this run is done, it is done. So there's a handful.
I'm
Literally
selling mine on
handful
eBay.
left.
'Cause I knew about that.
Sally McRae,
Patreon.com.
the Pokemon trader over here, is like hoarding the market.
Patreon.com/Billy Yang. And before we sign off, I want to acknowledge a few people that came on board. $7 and up pledges: Jay Lee, Mark Schmidt, Chris Sherwood, Maria Ferdin, Michael Kars, Jacob Cavender, Alexander Conrad, Harrison Lakehomer, Skip Brand, David Sobira, Will Olson. Thank you guys so much. These are the recent $7 and up pledges on Patreon. Also to my executive producers, Gary and Tammy Jones, Mark Grabowski, Mark Griffith, Wayne Chan, Andrew Pollard, Liz McHutcheon, Spencer Potter, Jin Yang, Sunchel Choi, Natty Tongstiri, Brian Sands, Meg Hollins, and Raja Bose. Thank you all so much. And thank you all for hanging out. This was a brilliant conversation, hopefully.
I know, 2 hours.
And and could have gone on for a couple more. Wishing you
I know,
all
always.
Wishing you all the best in 2022. Remember, have fun above all else. Have fun. It's supposed to be an enjoyable hobby, not your second job. So have fun doing it first and foremost. And thank you for listening. And I hope to see you guys at some point in the new year. Once again, my utmost gratitude to Jason Koop and Sally McRae. Thank you guys. Have a great evening.